Hello out there, this is the AnYPony, and I want to talk a little bit about the topic I actually already made my thoughts on video about in the past. I want to talk a little bit about shipping. But while my thoughts on video was more about shipping in general and how to deal with it and what kind of are wishes for the future, today I want to talk a little bit about what makes a good ship. And first of all, for everybody who hasn't figured it out yet, I am pretty much into shipping. I am actually so much into shipping that when I was thinking about, hey, what stories do I want to do dramatic readings of? I was like, Out in the Cold, okay, it's shipping. Allegrazza, shipping, okay. Time and Life of a Winning Pony, shipping. Pretty much all my favorite novels I wanted to talk about were shipping. The only one that was not shipping was Past Sins, and Past Sins is already covered dramatic reading wise. I am so much into shipping that at some point I was kind of afraid to become the German guy that reads the shipping fics all the time. So you can say I have a little bit of experience with shipping. And now I want to elaborate a little bit what I think makes a good, respectively a bad ship. There are four main ingredients that kind of go into the quality of a ship. Number one is the chemistry. This one is a little bit harder to grasp. It is like chemistry is usually used as this overall phrase, kind of like, ooh, they have good chemistry, especially for movies when the stars, the actors are supposed to play a couple, and there are often couples where the people are like, oh yeah, they really have a good chemistry, and no surprise, they also have a good chemistry off camera and stuff like this. Then there are this expressionless deadpans a la Twilight series that are just standing there and looking at each other with expressionless eyes and be like, oh, you are so beautiful. There is no chemistry. So in MLP, shippings I see as shippings with chemistry is, for example, Rary Spike. I don't really officially ship them. They have this certain OTV vibe to it because they are hinted towards every now and then in the series, especially when they fall down at the end of Secret of My Success. This interaction between them when Spike is like, Rarity, I want to tell you something, and she is just like having this really deep smile and just puts her hoof on his mouth to stop him from talking, and she has his tears in her eyes. And another example I really like is Twilight Trixie. We have this actually stronger character who is a leader person, Twilight, but she is not very boastful, and even so she has a tendency to take command, she is not going there and being like, I am the best. And we have Trixie on the other hand, who is showmare, who has a lot of tricks in her sleeve, but who has this very loud personality, and this also creates a certain level of chemistry between those two. The second aspect is believability, and this is often enough a thing when you hear about a ship and you just start scratching your head like, okay, how did you get this idea? For example, pretty much all possible combinations within the main six exist and have been shipped by somebody already multiple times. But there are a few that are more dominant and others you come across rather seldom. And there is a reason. For example, Twilight Pinkie Pie. I don't see it. I don't really could believe those two fall for each other. An example for something I totally experience as believable is Apple Dash. They have a lot of similarities. They are both very competitive and sports persons. They both are not very interested in all the female stuff like Rarity is. But then again, they have this kind of dynamic going on with Rainbow Dash always trying to shoot away, attack somebody, and Apple Dash always gets her tail and keeps her down like, hold it there, Sugar Cube. Yeah, I totally can see them as a bickering couple. They are believable. The third one is they should be interesting, and this kind of becomes a subjective matter. It depends on what you are interested in. For example, one couple that has definitively chemistry, and I think it is totally believable, but I'm simply not interested in, is Big Mac Fluttershy. They really make a cute couple. They are a great combination, but come on, can you imagine an interesting conversation between those two? As a ship, as something you can fantasize about and write stories, I don't really see too much happening with those two. An example for a very interesting pair-up is Rarity Applejack. We all have seen how interesting their interaction can get in Look Before You Sleep. And the idea to say, oh, can you imagine those two in a relationship? You automatically have a smirk on your face and be like, oh yeah, I would like to see this. And that's pretty much what makes it interesting. And last but not least, the fourth aspect is inspiration. There needs to be something that makes you go like, huh, I wonder how those two would be in a ship, or could it be there is something going on? You need this kind of moment in which you start thinking like this. In the case of, for example, Lyra and Bonbon, it was, as far as I know, the fact that they often are paired up with each other because they have a color scheme that is kind of interesting to watch, and so people started recognizing them and saw, oh wait, they are together again. Maybe they are together. This was all inspiration necessary to create one of the fandom-wide least controversial couples. But then again, there are also more obvious inspirations in the series, especially with more established characters. Rarity and Applejack in Look Before You Sleep, Applejack and Rainbow Dash. Another one would be Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, because they are kind of childhood friends. They have this close relationship, but when you look at them, you could also be like, maybe they are more than just close friends. And if this inspiration is obvious enough to enough of people, it is likely that this ship catches on. Now I want to elaborate my model about how a good ship works a little bit with two examples. One example about a brilliant ship I really adore, and one about a rather awful ship. Let's start with the awful one so we have it out of the way. I already talked about it a little bit, and it is kind of breaking the rule because it is a canon ship, but such an awful ship would never kick off in the fandom, so this had to come from official side to have any chance at all. I'm talking of course about Twilight Flash Sentry. Okay, let's go through the list. Chemistry. There is no chemistry. They are just blandly staring at each other and flushing. There is no interaction, so there is no chemistry. And even though we know a lot about Twilight's character, since we follow her for 3 seasons, we don't know anything about Flash. Everything we know about him is completely superficial. Next point on the list, believability. No! I don't believe in this couple. The first time she bumped into him and he was giving her the hand and helping her up, and she was like, oh, I was like, no, bullshit. And I still don't believe it, because this does not fit with Twilight. And because I criticized this unrealisticness, I got a lot of comments like, oh, I'm in high school, this is so realistic, this is how it's really happening. But just because this kind of bland, superficial relationship does actually happen in high school, doesn't really mean it is believable. Twilight has never before shown any interest in stallions whatsoever, and now when she has so much to worry about being in the human world, she suddenly falls for a character and carries this crush over into the pony world. No, I don't believe it. And remind me again, what is interesting about this pair-up? Nothing! He is a Gary Stu, which pretty much destroys every possible interesting thing going on there from the start, but there's also not really happening much from Twilight's end. It is completely boring and bland. And no, this is not interesting. And inspiration, I don't know where Megan got her inspiration. Probably from Hasbro directives who were like, oh, we need a ship. High school girls love ships. But enough about this horrible pair-up. Let's talk about a great pair-up. Not to say, I believe my favorite ship. I thought I have a lot of ships I support, but this one is just BAM! I love it. I love it. Now, what ship am I talking about? Octavia, Vinyl, Scratch. They are both background characters, they believe have never even spoken a line, and nevertheless they are, together with Lyra and Bonbon, one of the most accepted ships in the whole fandom. So let me compare those two, because there is an interesting difference. Lyra and Bonbon are usually used background characters. They are in nearly every episode, and often enough they are even multiple times in the same shot. Vinyl and Octavia, on the other hand, both had only seconds of screen time over all 3 seasons. Nevertheless, in nearly every fiction they appear, they have very similar characters to their other appearances. While Lyra and Bonbon often are very, very different from their other incarnation. With Vinyl and Octavia, they are pretty much always the same. Octavia is the straight man, she is very sophisticated, and she is a very disciplined and tidy character. Vinyl, on the other hand, is usually the gal who is into electronic music, who likes to hit the clubs, and who has a rather hedonistic lifestyle and maybe is a little bit immature. This consistency in character comes from their very, very short appearances, because they both have very distinct appearances and behavior. This very stoic stand when she's on stage, and she is trying to keep her cool even with Pinky going crazy around her, and she is having this aura of professionalism and straightness, and also she has this very tidy hair, she has this little bow tie, so you see where her characterization comes from. And then we have Vinyl, she has this crazy mane, she wears her sunglasses at night, she has this bumping her head with the beat going on, so she really reminds us of this rather careless but passionate clubbing person. This pretty much explains why they are always so similar, because their very, very short appearances gave so much information about them as characters. Now let's see how they work as a couple according to my model. Let's start with the very easiest, where I don't have a lot to say, the inspiration. They are 2 musicians. That's it. There is nothing more. Their appearances do not even come close to each other, so there is no possible reason how those two could know each other. The only thing is, they are musicians. Let's ship them. But you could still ship them with other musicians. I believe there are stories about Octavia dating somebody else in her ensemble. And also in Epic Waptine, Octavia goes on a date with another musician. So yeah, the idea to pair them with other musicians already came up as well. But why is it always them? Well, my next point. They are interesting as a couple for all the reasons I just explained earlier about their characterization. We couldn't take away from their appearances and their behavior alone. They have a lot of features that are very, very opposite to each other. Contrast makes it interesting to watch. When you see those completely different characters, you are like, oh my god, can you imagine those two in a relationship? This is also the reason why, even in stories they are not shipped with each other, they often appear as friends nonetheless, because they are just so interesting to watch that even non-shippers want to see them interact. This pretty much also covers the chemistry between those two. About the believability, it kind of depends on how they are written or drawn or whatever. Because the thing is, since they are background characters, even with all this very distinctive appearances and behavior, they are still pretty much blank slates. They are still pretty much open for interpretation, and if whoever creates something shipping related about those two, it is up to this person if the ship turns out believable or not. Well, this was my take on what makes a good ship, and I guess this is AnYPony and saying see you soon.